Sports Snippets, Dennis Sullivan. It is Sunday. It is the 14th of June, 2020. Thank you so much for watching this video, giving me a chance to share some feedback I have on different topics in sports. This week I have a very interesting topic, I do believe, and that is going to be the top 5 quarterbacks of all time who never made it to a Super Bowl. Forget about not winning a Super Bowl. This list never made it to a Super Bowl. At least never started a Super Bowl game, that I can tell you. And please go ahead and hit that like button if you do like the content of this video. If you'd like to subscribe to my channel, Sports Snippets with Dennis Sullivan, that would be greatly appreciated, of course, as well. Before we get started, guys, did a video last Sunday back on the 7th, and I listed the top 5 quarterbacks, in my opinion, of all time in the National Football League. And then I had an honorable mention where I mentioned several quarterbacks on this list, and it's one of those things where, you know, you can just keep adding to it. But there was one guy in particular who I did leave, actually two players who I left out. So I just want to kind of get this one out of the way, and then we can go right into the topic of this video. Aaron Rodgers, I had him on my list, and I didn't mention him in the video, so he's definitely an honorable mention. Has won a Super Bowl, one of the best quarterbacks of his time, hands down, still playing in the league, one of the best quarterbacks of all time when it comes to not throwing interceptions, taking care of the football. Aaron Rodgers, definitely an honorable mention, as is Kurt Warner, who won a Super Bowl with the Rams, as you recall. He lost a Super Bowl with the Rams against New England back when Tom Brady won his first Super Bowl. And he even took the Arizona Cardinals to a Super Bowl. So Kurt Warner, I mean, definitely one of the better quarterbacks of his time as well. Retired just small handful of years ago. Had a tremendous career, did Kurt Warner, and of course in his big years of playing with the Rams, you know, back in his prime, I guess you could say. I mean, he was still pretty good for the Cardinals. His offense was known as the greatest show on turf. Now, of course, it was other players with Kurt Warner who were tremendous. But Kurt Warner and Aaron Rodgers are on that list of honorable mentions, so I'm glad I got that out of the way. Let's get into today's topic of my top 5 quarterbacks who never, ever, ever played in a Super Bowl. Let's get right to it at number 5, guys. Now, just like the last list when I kind of discussed the best quarterbacks of all time, this list as well had one thing in common. There were others we can bring up. But this time I'm just going to do the top 5. There's going to be other quarterbacks you're probably sitting there going, well, that guy never made it to a Super Bowl, or this player never made it to a Super Bowl. And it definitely got to that point when I was getting to like the 5th one, and the 5th name, so there could have been a few others, of course, on the list as well. And also, please keep in mind, there are some really good all-time quarterbacks who never won a Super Bowl, but did take their teams to a Super Bowl. So because they took their teams to a Super Bowl, they do not appear on this list, such as Dan Marino, who took the Dolphins to a Super Bowl one time, and Jim Kelly, as you recall, not only took the Bills to the Super Bowl 4 times, but he took the Bills, to a Super Bowl 4 years in a row. And they lost each time back in the early into the mid-90s. So you may recall just those 2 quarterbacks offhand, in Jim Kelly, Dan Marino. They were very good quarterbacks, great careers, never won a Super Bowl, but of course did take their teams to a Super Bowl. Those would be 2 prime examples off the top of my head. Let's get into the list right now. Number 5, I have Tony Romo. Guys, Tony Romo, he's not going to be remembered, of course, as a very good postseason quarterback. He was only 2-4 in the postseason as a starter. Not good as far as a postseason record. However, he does hold many of the Dallas Cowboys' all-time passing records. And let's be honest, Tony Romo was a good performer. I mean, the guy could perform. He was a good player. He was a 4-time Pro Bowl selection. He would throw for 4,000 yards or more 4 times in his career. He would also throw for 30 touchdowns or more 4 times in his career. From 2006 to 2013, Tony Romo, for that group of years, 06 to 2013, had the highest passer rating of any quarterback in the fourth quarter. I would never have known that. He was a very good player in the fourth quarter, just couldn't quite get his teams to the next level, and thus never appeared in a Super Bowl, but a very good career, very good player. Tony Romo comes in at number 5. At number 4, who can forget Randall Cunningham, who used to play for the Philadelphia Eagles back in the day. Really good player, and then eventually would go to the Minnesota Vikings and kind of create his own little etch in history there. Little corner of history there. Or he etched himself into that sort of elite group of Viking quarterbacks, in my opinion. I mean, Vikings could put him as one of their best quarterbacks, really, of all time, based on that one season he had. Where, as you recall, this is going back in the late 90s, the Vikings would put Randall Cunningham in as the starter very early in the season. He would go 13-1 as a starter for the Vikings. Okay. And this is the 98 season going into 99, according to my notes. The Vikings were clearly favored at home against the Atlanta Falcons, NFC Championship, to go to the Super Bowl, and they lose by a field goal at the end to the Atlanta Falcons. Randall Cunningham really should not be on this list, and I say that because that season, as the Vikings starting quarterback, that team was definitely Super Bowl worthy, if you will. They were a good team. They should have gotten into the Super Bowl that season, had a tremendous regular season, only to lose a heartbreaker at home by a field goal to the Atlanta Falcons. I mean, the Atlanta Falcons, we don't want to say that they didn't deserve it either, but boy, that was a setback for Randall Cunningham, and not just Randall Cunningham, but the entire Minnesota Vikings team of that season. They were tremendous that whole year. Cunningham will go 68-35 as a starter with the Vikings, and of course most of his career with the Philadelphia Eagles. He would play between the years 1985 to 2001. And one thing we can one final thought on Randall Cunningham: outstanding at extending plays, one of the best running quarterbacks we've ever seen. He almost set the tone for what was to come. He was one of the first really good, really effective, elusive running quarterbacks. And he would run for yards too. I mean, this guy could literally rush for a lot of yards. I mean, at least 50. At least. I mean, he went way over 50 many times. But he was a good running quarterback, really good player. Randall Cunningham comes in at number 4. At number 3, guys. At number 3, Dan Fouts. Let me tell you, his Charger teams of the past, they were knocking on that door, much like Randall Cunningham's team back in the late 90s. Dan Fouts had a couple of Charger teams that weren't just knocking on the door, they were pounding on the door to get into the Super Bowl, and for one reason or another, a loss to the Bengals one year. That other year, they had the Raiders, we thought, beat in the AFC Championship, to lose. Kind of a heartbreaker there. His teams, first of all, were really good for a while there, and Dan Fouts, you got to check this out, guys. I mean, let this sink in for a moment. Let me just explain. He threw for 4,000 yards or more 3 times in his career. Now you might be sitting there saying, well, what's the big deal about that? Dan Fouts threw, again, 4,000 yards or more, 1979, 80, and 81 seasons. That's when you weren't supposed to throw for 4,000 yards or more. That was, I mean, yes, the game was evolving, but I mean, it wasn't like today, guys, where you have, I mean, still is very good to throw for 4,000 yards, but you have a nice list of players here. Let's go over the list of players that threw for 4,000 yards or more. Dan Fouts would also throw for 30 or more touchdowns twice, which was actually, and as many times also in the mid to high 20s, definitely well into the 20s in touchdown passes throughout his career. Dan Fouts, one of the better just drop back throwers I have seen in my lifetime. Comes in at a solid number 3. Number 2 on my list is the one and only Warren Moon, everyone. You might remember Warren Moon from, this guy, I was surprised to learn that he's like into his 60s now. He's something like 63, 64 as this video is being filmed. A little bit older than I would have expected, but see, that's part of the greatness of Warren Moon in that when he got to the NFL, he was already 28 years old. He had won 5 championships in the Canadian Football League. This guy was a CFL legend. Okay, he comes in to the NFL at age 28, still managed to take his teams to 7 playoff appearances, to make 7 playoff appearances, taking his team to the playoffs 7 times. Not bad when you don't start your NFL career until you're 28. He was a 9-time Pro Bowler. So let's think about that. Warren Moon makes the Pro Bowl 9 times. He didn't even start his NFL career until he was 28. How awesome is that? And I do remember Warren Moon playing into his late 30s, and he was still really good. Really good. 1990 seemed to be his best of the best seasons where the awards were coming in, and he was first team All-Pro selection in 1990. Warren Moon, think about it, these 4 quarterbacks as we head to number 1 never led their team into a Super Bowl. That's crazy. Warren Moon never led his team into a Super Bowl. Played many years for the Oilers, as you recall. Played for, and again, he obviously was a winning quarterback, as were the other quarterbacks on this list. Okay, they weren't just good performers, they won a lot of games. And that had a lot to do with me putting together this list. I didn't really go before the 70s, really. Fouts comes in the late 70s. Like that, his career started to take off in the late 70s, and I believe he would start like mid-70s, but I didn't really go much before then, so this is more Super Bowl era, if you will. But Warren Moon, I'm putting him as a solid number 2 on my top 5 quarterbacks never to lead their team into a Super Bowl, guys. Leading us to number 1. Phillip Rivers. Let me just explain. Okay. Now, part of this, when I go over the laundry list of accomplishments, has to do with the fact that, yes, when it comes to the 4,000 yards or more, yeah, he does benefit a little bit as far as a historical perspective in that he's playing in today's game a little bit more wide open, a little bit more opportunity to throw for 4,000 yards or more. But first and foremost, he's played 14 straight seasons. He's going into his 15th straight season where he could potentially play in all 16 games, meaning the last 14 years he has played in every single, he's played in every game. That's mind-boggling stuff, guys. Mind-boggling durability on the behalf of Phillip Rivers. Okay, he is something else, this guy, and he's Phillip Rivers easily going to go to the Hall of Fame, first ballot. I don't see why not. He's an 8-time Pro Bowler, 397 touchdown passes to 198 interceptions, like a 2-for-1 ratio there. Passer rating's a little over 95. 11 times he's thrown for 4,000 yards or more. From 2005 to the present, at least from what I saw, it doesn't look like he's missed any games. He's thrown for 30 touchdowns or more 6 times. 6 times, 30 touchdowns or more. That's phenomenal. His teams, just like the others on this list, the teams of Phillip Rivers have been good. They lost to the Patriots, as you may recall, big playoff game ago at the Super Bowl. They lost that one. He was injured, and they had injuries to the team, and it was a tough break there. Phillip Rivers has had many good teams for the Chargers. Most of his career for the San Diego Chargers. Then, of course, now they are the LA Chargers. Tremendous career, not just tremendous statistics and performance, but his teams have been good for the most part year after year. Plenty of playoff appearances. He then, with that being said, will go down as my number one, as of this video. Of course, that can change over time, but he's my number one quarterback on my list to never play in a Super Bowl. Interesting enough, Phillip Rivers, Dan Fouts, 1 and 3, both played for the Chargers. So that's pretty cool. And you know, it's the best list I can come up with. So this is Dennis Sullivan, Sports Snippets with Dennis Sullivan. Go ahead, leave a comment below if you'd like to on maybe what your top 5 is. Comment, let me know if you like my list. Do you like what I came up with here? Do you agree with it? Do you disagree with it? Are there other guys that should be on the list? I'm taking this really from Super Bowl I to the present Super Bowl era. So if there was a great quarterback in 1951, that might be awesome, but that player would not qualify for this list because that's before the Super Bowl era. But still, I'd like to hear your comments. Thank you so much for watching. This is Dennis Sullivan saying so long. I'll see you next time.